What's going down, everybody, and welcome back to another CAD Pop Patreon submitted Decktech. Let's hit it right now. Alright, we're back. This is another Patreon submitted CAD Pop Decktech. Big thanks to Glenn Runyon for sending this one in. Another 5-color dragon. Totally different than the last one we did, though. We're going to get to it, I promise. But before we do, happy to announce that the Commander Ad Populum deck techs are now brought to you by FusionGamingOnline.com. They are there for all of your gaming needs, including the cards we talk about in the deck tech. So happy to include them on the journey. It's great working with those guys. You can find the deck techs on the manabase.com. You can follow the links in any of the show notes wherever you find the show to Fusion Gaming Online and pick up the cards. Maybe some hidden gems, maybe some suggestions, maybe the commander, the reason that we're featuring the deck. Of course, we feature the decks for 3 reasons. 1, to better acquaint new players with different strategies or to introduce them to kind of the width, the breadth, the depth of commander. The second reason being to take the intermediate players and maybe refine an edge, sharpen an edge, introduce them to a new archetype, one that they're interested in or one that they maybe just only discovered, maybe one they've never even heard of. And finally, of course, the old guys like myself, the longtime players. These are the people that have some amount of nostalgia associated with a deck or a commander or the arrangement of a deck, the basic lands, the commanders, the altars, the foil pimpness of the deck. Something about it just speaks to them, and it's something that they might never take apart. So, of course, there's crossover right there. You don't really belong to just one of those groups. You belong to 2 or more of them, or some combination thereof. Even myself, sometimes I would consider myself an introductory player for a certain strategy, a certain mindset when I play. So these are learning adventures for me too, and I'm happy to have you guys along. If you're a patron, big thank you. We've got a new one to thank today, and that is Chris Fitzgerald, brand new patron. Thank you. Welcome. Get your deck in. Take advantage of any of the other benefits associated with being a CAD Pop Patreon supporter. You make it all possible. I've got some new camera equipment that's helping me do some little minor altered art videos and stuff for the CAD Pop YouTube channel as it's getting created and populated when we hit that Patreon stretch goal. It's the next one. It's coming up quick, so hopefully I'm not too busy with the summer, and come fall we can get all that launched and kind of take the channel to kind of the next level. So, with all that being said, Ramos Dragon Engine, a 4/4 legendary artifact creature dragon for 6 generic mana with flying. Whenever you cast a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Ramos Dragon Engine for each of that spell's colors. Also, remove 5 +1/+1 counters from Ramos. Add white, blue, black, red, green. Activate this ability only once each turn. Okay, so 5 colors, because it's right there in the text box. Color identity is all colors, even though it's a colorless creature. And when I think of Ramos decks in my head, it's like, okay, you've got a generic kind of mana sink in that 6 mana cost out of the command zone. So I'm thinking good stuff decks, or just decks that could just use a 4/4 flyer for 6 because it's available. Not today though. A little bit we're playing a big mana deck, which is kind of the other strategy that players might utilize when building Ramos. And we've talked about this before, strategically including cards that play into that effect. For example, in this deck, in the removal section, we do have a Beast Within and a Swan Song. Those are 2 of the 6 removal spells, or spot removal spells, that are 1 color spells. I don't mind maybe something instead of Swan Song, maybe include a 2-color, 2-mana counter spell instead of Swan Song. The first one that comes to mind is Undermine, just because I like that card. It's invasion. It's like black, blue, counter target spell. Its controller loses 3 life. We're already playing Dovin's Veto. We're playing Counterflux, which is an overload spell that counters one thing you don't control or everything that you don't control. And it's a 3-mana, 2-color counter spell. It's going to put 2 counters on Ramos. That's the point I was trying to make. Assassin's Trophy, 2 counters. Anguish Unmaking, 2 counters. Maybe that Swan Song could be like a Vindicate, 2 counters. Maelstrom Pulse, 2 counters. So that's the point I'm trying to make with this deck, is strategically include things, much like the Niv Mizzet deck we talked about a couple weeks ago. Strategically include stuff that is going to go into your hand with Niv, like we said a couple weeks ago. Strategically include things that are going to give you multiple counters for an effect that you want. Straight up all bonus. The 2-color version of whatever you're playing is probably going to give you some added bonus. The Dovin's Veto in here can't be countered, and you counter target non-creature spell. If that was just like a counter spell, well, sure, it hits anything, but it can be countered. You add it, you slap a second color on there, all of a sudden the spell maybe is better. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about today. So we already covered the removal, the spot removal anyways. Let's get to some of the other common kind of every deck cards. Those would be our card draws and our tutors and our ramp and stuff. So our ramp section has an Arcane Signet, Chromatic Lantern, Felwar Stone, and a Talisman of Curiosity. That is the green-blue one. Lots of green in this deck. It is a 5-color deck. We are running a lot of green-based ramp in Crop Rotation, Cultivate, Gyre, Sage, Nature's Lore, Rishkar Pima Renegade, which I'll read in a second, Seedborn Muse, and Skyshroud Claim. Rishkar, legendary creature, when it enters a battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Each creature you control with a counter on it has tap, add green to your mana pool. So Rishkar is going to distribute 2 counters wherever you want, and it's going to give Ramos a counter. So Ramos is going to get a counter, you can get another one from Rishkar, then you can put a Rishkar counter on himself. And then your Rishkar and your Ramos are both going to tap for mana. That's a little way to get around removing 5 counters to get 10 mana if you don't have anywhere to sink that 10 mana in Ramos right at the time. So it's a smart little include. It's a good way to circumvent what I just said about 2-color creatures to get 2 or more counters. Rishkar's going to do it. Then in addition, we've got a Fabor Elder. That is the 2-color Bloom Tender, so that's a smart one. I like that one. We've got a Mirari's Wake, which is going to be a mana doubler. That's going to give you big mana whether you have Ramos or not. And it's a 2-color mana doubler, which is, again, just bonus for the deck. Now, the next couple custom categories, big thank you. Big thank you for the custom categories. The next couple, we're going to kind of clump together. And those are our card draw spells, our tutor spells, our recursion spells, and our free cast spells. Essentially, when I look at a deck or when I build a deck, I like to take the things that are going to give me some additional card advantage, whatever that means, and clump them together. For example, what I mean is classic EDH example, Eternal Witness. Green, 1, 2/1, Human Shaman, enters the battlefield, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. That's regrowth for 1 extra mana. That 1 extra mana gives you a body on the battlefield that you can block with, attack with, get the chip-ins, kids, recur to do again, but it's also getting you a card back from your graveyard. So I'm getting a body for 1 mana, and I'm regrowthing for 2 mana. That's what that effect is worth. So, great card. It's going to give me card advantage. Not actual card advantage in my hand, because I'm trading 1 card, the Eternal Witness, on the battlefield, out of my hand, for a card from my graveyard back to my hand. So I'm 1-for-1 trading, but the quality of those cards is probably going to go up. Eternal Witness is going to trade up to something powerful, more powerful that is, and I'm going to be left over with a 2/1. That's why that card's good. You can trade it up and you still get it. Our other recursion spell, Eerie Ultimatum. Return any number of permanent cards with different names, because that's hard, from your graveyard to the battlefield. Bonus points because it costs green, black, white. So Ramos is going to get 3 counters, and you're going to get every permanent back from your graveyard. Sick. That's like Eternal Witness on steroids. That's great. Our tutors follow suit in the multicolor category. We've got Eladamri's Call, searches for a creature, puts it into your hand, and Bring to Light. Blue-green 3. There's the blue-green. We've got extra blue-green in the deck. Search your library for a creature, instant, or sorcery card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of colored mana you spent to cast Bring to Light. Exile that card. You may cast the card without paying its mana cost. So you can search for up to a 5-drop if you can spend 5 different color on Bring to Light. And let me tell you, there's some good ones. Good ones like Maelstrom Archangel. It costs Wooburg, flying, 5/5 angel. When it deals combat damage to a player, you may play, that is that is now cast, you may cast a non-land card from your hand without paying its mana cost. And remember, you're casting it, so it's going to trigger Ramos. In a similar fashion, but if you have big mana, because I'm looking at this as a big mana deck, and we're gonna get into more of that in a minute. Electro-Dominance. Instant speed, red, X, deals X damage to any target, which is great in a big mana deck because you can go right to the head if you have to late game, but also you may cast a card with converted mana cost X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Sure, you have to pay the mana cost to be able to cast the card, but you're getting a free, whatever it is, 5, 6, 7, 8, 15 damage to somebody's head out of the Electro-Dominance. So you're trading the card Electro-Dominance at red plus the card in your hand's mana cost that you actually want to pay. You just put that into X, and then you're getting a free 7, 8, 10, 15 damage out of it. It's getting you some advantage, even though it's not real card advantage in your hand. There's a value, and I'm not sure how to kind of articulate it. There's a value, though, to just saying, take 10. I don't know if you put a card value on it. I'm not sure you put a mana value on it, but there is a value to it. And the other way around, if you look at Electro-Dominance, like I want to do 10 and everything else is just going to be free, then there's like an actual value that we can kind of extrapolate. Like red, X equals 10, take 10, you die. I'm going to put this 5 for 5 down. That 5 for 5 is worth 5 mana. It's a 5/5. Like, that's a card. So you can start to see why I'm lumping in the recursion and the free cast in with the card draw. Tutors are a little bit different, but generally the cost of the tutor is going to kind of use the card to upgrade to a better card, which is worth something even if it's not actual more cards in your hand. It's not real card advantage. A lot of people call it card quality. It's a card quality increaser, but there is an amount of mana that's worth. There is, maybe if you're tutoring for a card draw spell, right? And that card draw spell might be a Rishkar's Expertise. Maybe it draws you 5. Well, you just have to think, okay, Rishkar's Expertise, but it only draws me 4 because I used a tutor already. Still advantage. You just have to strategically find that advantage and kind of utilize it in a way that is different than how many cards in my hand. The actual card draw spells, Abzan Charm, Drawn from Dreams, Guardian Project, Inspiring Call, Kozilek Butcher of Truth, because Kozilek costs 10. And remember how much mana that we get from Ramos? Wooburg, that's 10, everybody. Kozilek ETBs at the cost of 5 counters off of Ramos, draw 4. That's awesome. Mystic Remora, Prime Speaker Zagana, Pull from Tomorrow. That's an X draw spell, which again, big mana. That goes right alongside Sphinx's Revelation, X to draw X, gain X life. Return of the Wild Speaker, that's gonna hit off of Ramos before you remove the counters. So that's 5 mana at instant speed, draw a card equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. Well, if Ramos has 5, 6 counters, he might be a 10/10. You draw 10. That goes alongside Rishkar's Expertise, which is draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control as well. And of course, Ramos would trigger off of the 5 drop or less that Rishkar's Expertise allows you to play for free. Remember, read the cards. If they say cast, even if you don't spend the mana, Rishkar checks how many colors the spell is. Okay, so that's kind of the every deck type section. And we saw some examples of how Ramos is going to utilize multicolored spells. That's great. Let's take a look at some of the +1 counter cards. We've got a Proliferate section, of course, Thrumming Bird. It's a flyer when it attacks. Grateful Apparition deals combat damage. Proliferate. Flux Channeler, cast a non-creature. Proliferate. Evolution Sage. Landfall. Proliferate. And Atraxa. At the end of your turn, Proliferate. What I like about this Proliferate category is it's very diverse. Sure, there's 2 cards that trigger on attack, but let's say I've got the Thrumming Bird and an Evolution Sage. Well, I'm going to attack with my Thrumming Bird because it flies, and I'm going to play my lands because that's how I'm going to win the game. So I'm going to do both of those things, so you better take out both of these if you don't want me to proliferate. And of course, you always proliferate your Ramos. That's just a free way to get counters for doing stuff that you already want to do. We've got a few things that also ETB, enter the battlefield and provide +1 counters. We've got a Good Fortune Unicorn, 3-drop 2/2. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, put a +1 counter on that creature. So Ramos might just get a free counter when you cast him. Master Biomancer, 2/4 for 4. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with a number of additional +1 counters on it equal to Master Biomancer's power. And it's a mutant in addition to its other types. I'm not sure if that's relevant in the deck, but we throw back to that Rishkar Pima Renegade ramp card and we throw a couple +1s on Master Biomancer. Well, then Ramos is going to automatically just drop and be big. Cool. Rhythm of the Wild is another kind of one that works in a similar vein. Creatures you cast can't be countered, so that's great when you're spending 6, 8, 10, 12 on Ramos because he's going to die. But also, non-token creatures you control have Riot. That means they either enter the battlefield and get haste or enter the battlefield and get a +1/+1. So Master Biomancer, of course, you're going to give a +1 to. Rishkar, you're going to give a +1 to the Master Biomancer. Ramos, you're going to give a +1, and then 2 more +1s with the Master Biomancer and the Rhythm of the Wild. So Ramos might come in at, like a 7/7 if you kind of curve into that. Which 7 power commander that flies, automatically good, but also that means you only need to cast like a 2 mana spell and all of a sudden you can convert that 2 mana next turn into 10 mana plus what is probably 6 or 7 mana on your battlefield if you've cast Ramos already. Now these next 3 cards, I'm not sure if I like all of them, even though all 3 of them are actually really good. The first one is Forgotten Ancient. What it is a 0/3 for 4, it's a creature. Whenever a player casts a spell, you may put a +1 counter on Forgotten Ancient. That's cool. It'd be better if you could do that with any of your creatures, but what it also allows you to do is at the beginning of your upkeep, you may move any number of +1s from Forgotten Ancient onto other creatures. Of course, you'd move them over to Ramos, but you can't do that until your next upkeep, unless you have some way to give Forgotten Ancient flash, and it's a whole thing, like not really a workaround or a hoop that I'm willing to jump through. Again, great card, but it is slow. Hadana's Climb is the next one. The same thing. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1 on target creature you control. Then if the creature has 3 or more +1s on it, you can transform Hadana's Climb into Winged Temple of Arazka. You could pay 3 and essentially target creature gains flying and double its power, which is fine, but again, you gotta wait until the beginning of combat on your turn. It's fine on Maiden Phase 1 if Ramos already has +1 counters on him, but that isn't always the case if you want to cash in the first 5 counters to maybe like do a card draw spell, and you don't draw your Hadana's Climb until after the card draw spell, which might have been after you attack to get like... You take advantage of the counters by attacking, you remove them, you draw cards, you draw into Hadana's Climb, and it's like you got to start over. I don't know, it just seems slow. The final one, the Ozolith, legendary artifact for 1. Whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, any kind, put those counters on the Ozolith. Cool. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if the Ozolith has counters on it, you may move all counters from the Ozolith onto target creature. So, of course, if Ramos would die, you move all his counters if you don't want to cash him in on instance or what have you. And then when you cast him again, you get all those counters back. And keep in mind, instances or abilities that place counters onto things will affect that first ability and will also affect that second ability. So if we move on to Conclave Mentor, Corpsejack Menace, and Hardened Scales, which all say if 1 or more +1 counters would be placed onto a creature you control, that many +1 are placed on it instead. With Corpsejack, you actually get twice the number. So when the Ozolith puts the counters back onto Ramos, you're getting double or 1 extra. Both are great. We've also got a Winding Constrictor. If 1 or more counters would be placed onto an artifact or creature you control, that many of those counters +1. So that one affects the Ozolith as well because it says counters onto an artifact. So when counters move off of Ramos onto Ozolith, it's going to get an extra 1. And when they move from Ozolith onto Ramos, you're going to get an extra 1 there too. So both great in back and forth either way. Our final hard and fast category is our wipes and our win cons. So the first one is Herald of Secret Streams. It's a Merfolk Warrior, 2/3 for blue 3. Creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them can't be blocked. So this is your all-in on Ramos. This is going to be a win con if for example you cast, like a 2 mana, like a 2 color, then a 3 color, then a 2 color, and then it's like he's huge and you got in for 7 last turn and it's like you're just going to make him unblockable and somebody's going to die. Next up, Mythos of Snapdax, white 2. Each player chooses an artifact, creature, enchantment, and planeswalker from among non-land permanents they control and sacrifices the rest. But if you paid white, black, red to cast this spell, you choose the permanents for that player instead. So you're just going to get rid of a whole bunch of stuff that you just pick. And we're playing all the colors, so it shouldn't be an issue. But do remember, this spell only is white despite its color identity being all the way Mardu. The spell is only white. Next one up, and I love this card, Overwhelming Stampede. You could insert Triumph of the Hordes. You could probably insert Overrun as well, just because it's trample, but we are already playing Return of the Wild Speaker, which is instant speed Overrun if we didn't want to draw cards. What it says is, until end of turn, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So if we have a couple creatures and then a Ramos with like 10 counters on it and we give +14/+14 to all of our creatures, that's probably going to be kill a player, kill 2 players, win the game type card. Final wipe is Ruinous Ultimatum. This is black, white, red, destroy all non-land permanents your opponents control. All non-lands that all of your opponents control. Very powerful card. Very, very powerful card. And you know what? I actually made a mistake. I said that was the last category in the deck, but we've also got a Blink and Bounce package. This is a Deadeye Navigator and a Teamer Sabertooth. Essentially, both cards allow you to pay 2 mana, green 1 or blue 1, and bounce something to your hand. Deadeye Navigator brings it back immediately. Teamer Sabertooth makes you have to play it again, but I'm sure that there's ways that we could, for example, cast a Maelstrom Archangel, for example, and it costs Wooburg, so it's going to put 5+1s on Ramos. You can remove the 5+1s to get Wooburg ×2, and you could use green and whatever other color to bounce the Maelstrom Archangel with the Teamer Sabertooth, and then use the other Wooburg to play the Maelstrom Archangel again to get 5 counters again. Now, what you do need to keep in mind is that you can only activate Ramos's ability to make Wooburg. You can only do that once per turn. So you do have to, at some point, with some of that Wooburg mana, you do have to pay into Deadeye Navigator's blue 1 or Teamer Sabertooth's green 1 to bounce Ramos and either play him again with Teamer Sabertooth or just let him enter back onto the battlefield with the Deadeye Navigator Soulbond ability. And when you do that, that activate only once per turn clause sees Ramos as a new object, and then you can activate that ability again. But that's a little bit of a hoop that you got to jump through. So let's see if, keeping that in mind, with Wooburg mana, we're going to net, usually if Ramos just costs 6, we're going to net 4 mana off of that, minus the Teamer Sabertooth mana or the Deadeye mana. So we're going to net 2. Let's see if we can figure it out. And you can just go infinite time. You're never going to make green off that. You're never going to make infinite green off of that, but you can substitute the generic mana for every other color mana that you want. And if you do that enough times, you can make, infinite mana to cast a huge Electro Dominance. If you've got like a Corpsejack Menace or a Winding Constrictor, something that's giving you extra counters, you can then make green, I guess, because every 5th time you're going to get, the 5th extra counter you need to make green. And if you've got a Guardian Project on the battlefield, you've got a continuous creature entering the battlefield loop, so you can also draw your whole deck. So that's going to get you down to whatever combo piece or removal piece that you need to do kind of the loop that I just described. And I guess if you've got every 5th time you do this, if you can get an extra Ramos activation as a means to make infinite green, you can then use the green to infinite bounce your Eternal Witness that you drew down to, so you can always return your Electro Dominance, and you have infinite instances of Electro Dominance now. So there's combos in all things, and that's, I guess, the third kind of path that you can take Ramos down, is trying to find that bounce of a multicolored spell, or just infinite casting of spells. And if you can fit those in at a smaller kind of package or a smaller rate than Glenn has them in here today, you might be able to pack more protection and utility spells than just 6, or more card draws than 11, and that's only going to further protect, enhance, or streamline your combo. I should say Crashing Drawbridge, Eerie Interlude, Heroic Intervention, Slippery Bogbonder, that's a C20 card, that's in here. Flash Hexproof, when it enters the battlefield, put a Hexproof counter on target creature, then move any number of counters from among creatures you control onto that creature. So you could maybe have a Ramos newly entered the battlefield. Somebody wants to kill it before it has any counters, but you've got your Rhythm of the Wild, your Rishkar, Pima Renegades. You've got some counters. You can put a Hexproof onto your Ramos and then move the +1s from those other creatures onto Ramos to kind of kickstart them a little bit early. So that's a cool one. Unbreakable Formation and Swift Foot Boots. No Lightning Greaves because Shroud, and you need to be able to target Ramos in this deck. So other than some utility lands and like a fairly, I'm going to not say over the top crazy 5-color mana base, that's the deck. We're playing 11 basics. It looks like the Command Towers, Exotic Orchard, City of Brass, Mana Confluence, not fetch lands, but shock lands, pain lands. So I do appreciate it's still a $240 mana base, but it's not a $2,040 mana base. And this is the kind of mana base that I think is perfectly serviceable for a 5-color deck, particularly because we've got 11 basics and some of that green, like mono green ramp, even though it might not be the exact best thing with Ramos. I love that there's a combo backup. I love that it's kind of a big mana draw Ramos deck. I love that there's a Voltron kind of crash in with Ramos backup plan as well. Like I mentioned, the Proliferate package, how it kind of hits on all different axes that you can kind of proliferate on or from. I like that feature of the deck. Good little foundation in each of the categories. There's a good little foundation to build off of, right? Like the Master Biomancer Rhythm of the Wild thing, the Ozolith with the Slippery Bogbonder and the counter adder doubler type cards. Love that. I would maybe suggest, Growth Spiral, the blue-green one that says play an extra land, draw a card. It is instant speed. It is a 2-color sort of ramp spell. We're drawing enough cards that I think we're going to have land in our hands, so that might be a good one. And I would also maybe recommend, just because we're playing other ultimatums, and this is also another 3-color spell for Ramos that we could probably just get off of his activation, provided we had an extra red, I would like to see Inspired Ultimatum. That is the white, red, blue sorcery. Target player gains 5 life. Inspired Ultimatum deals 5 damage to any target. You draw 5 cards. That one's good. The draw 5 cards is the coolest part, but it also does do damage. So if we can infinite loop that, like I said in my example, getting instead of the Electro Dominance back with Eternal Witness, we could get back the Inspired Ultimatum, or a Cruel Ultimatum, which is the red, black, blue one. Target opponent sacrifices a creature, discards 3 cards, then loses 5 life. You return a creature from your graveyard to your hand, draw 3 cards, then gain 5 life. So this is another one that we could maybe think about looping in conjunction with Eternal Witness, or if Eternal Witness is the creature that we infinite bounce back and forth, we can always get this back. And then if we have it in our hand and somebody kills our Eternal Witness in response, we can still get it back. So Cruel Ultimatum might be able to serve as a protection card, a draw 3 cards type spell, or a burn spell or a drain spell for our opponents. So added utility, 3-color spell, big mana, fits. I think those two fit all of the kind of check boxes that this deck might want. So those are my suggestions. I think the deck's cool without them. I would like to play this deck. This is the kind of Ramos deck that I would build because I think, again, it hits on all the fronts. that a 5-color Ramos, big mana, big draw combo or Voltron backup ought to hit on. And I just think it's cool, and I'm glad that I got to feature it. A little bit of an elephant in the room is the $700 price tag, but we might see a Traxa's value dip come Commander Legends if she's getting any kind of new fancy reprint. Okay, we've just seen a Mana Confluence reprint in Commander Legends. That might dip. We're supposed to be getting fetch lands sometime in 2020. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but every once in a while, they're going to throw us a bone, right? Like that $25 or $30 Prismatic Vista won't stay that way for long. The basic lands in this particular list on Archidect, link will be in the show notes, does have all the full art unhinged lands that are running up the deck's budget by $42, and you could cut those out and just save yourself $42 on and just run regular basics. And then there's some random foils that, you know, an Anguished Unmaking foil is $20, an Alchemist Refuge is $4. It's like, if you take out all those foils, you're probably looking at, you know, somewhere between $50 to $60. You take out those basics, that's another $40. You've saved $100 already. If you get clever with the wild growths and the growth spirals and the ramp package, maybe you could run more basics. I think that would be fine. Another thing in your 5-color decks to maybe watch for, especially like this one, if they're not trying to go off on turn 2, 3, 4, because it's not a hyper-competitive deck, just keep an eye on the shock lands and the triomes from Ikoria. Which ones are in standard when, which ones demand the price tag for being a sought-after standard card, and you can build your 3, 4, 5-color mana bases accordingly. And they'll rotate, and they will most likely be reprinted, or sometime in the future the triomes might get the shard-colored complement to our now wedge-colored versions that we got in Ikoria. So just keep your eye out for that kind of stuff. Same with the Battle Bond lands, just previewed this week for Commander Legends as well. So that'll be in November, and we'll be able to get our hands on some more of that kind of stuff. Watch out for the Battle Bond lands and the Zendikar Rising Commander decks as well, because those are going to be all reprints, all stuff that like most people might already be doing. But if you're new and you see a $600 price tag on a deck that somebody online talked about that looks fun, like there are ways to get around it. There's ways to skimp. There's ways to over time build up your mana base, all of which we've talked about on Commander Ad Populum proper over the last year and a half or so. So go back, find the back issues, find I'm going to air quotes finance episodes, and make the best out of it. And of course, you can listen to all future episodes of Commander Ad Populum on Wednesdays and every second Friday, like today's Decktech is. So big thank you to Glenn Runyon for sending this in. Big thank you to all of the other patrons for being part of the Commander Ad Populum community in whatever capacity that means. I do appreciate it, whether it's the Altered Art cards, the Discord, just interacting on Twitter, sending me messages, actually being my friend in real life or a family member. The support does really go a long way, and it makes it all possible. Big thank you to FusionGamingOnline.com. They're your source for all your gaming needs. Follow the link in the show notes. Head on over to themanabase.com. Check out the content there. There'll probably be a linked deck list if the editor Ian helps me out with that, because I'm still kind of new at it. I don't really know exactly what to do, but they're all great there. If you can, if you're willing, if you don't have a local game store, they are a local game store, and I have been there, and they were great. So head on over, FusionGamingOnline.com. And that's it. Great deck. Love it. If you're a patron, if you haven't had a deck featured yet, send it in. Send me a couple. We'll discuss which I think is the best fit for the show based on where we've been and where we're going. I've got a couple of my own decks that I've been asked to feature or that I've been asked about. So before we start to recycle back to kind of the top of the order, I'd like to do a couple of my own decks. If that's of interest to you, let me know. If you've played with or against me or have seen any of my decks, let me know which ones you'd like me to feature, and I'll do my best to get them on. And with that, everybody, I will see you next Wednesday.